Hi, everyone. We will make a start. A few more people are trickling in, but we will make a start. Thank you for joining and welcome to this afternoon's webinar with Gathered Here and F&P. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Just some really quick housekeeping. If you have questions during the session, please use the Q&A box on your screen. It is great if you can use that rather than the chat thread where questions tend to be lost. So if you can use the Q&A box, that would be great. Someone from the Gathered Here team will be in the background answering those questions. So keep an eye on those. And if we do have time at the end of the presentation, we will try and answer some questions live. The second note is that a recording of the webinar and slides will be emailed to you post-webinar. So don't worry about missing anything or trying to scribble down loads of notes. You will get that in the next few days, within the next week. So now I would like to move on and introduce our speakers for today. We have Lucy McMorran and Adam Herodotus from Gathered Here. They've got lots to share with us today, so I'll hand straight over to them. They're going to talk on the topic of timing for digital bequest campaigns. Lucy and Adam, thank you so much for being here, and I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fiona, and thank you to everyone for joining in today. We're really excited to be back for another webinar with you all. I think this is our fifth webinar with F&P now, and we always have such a great response from everyone. Lots of engagements and really interesting questions. So hopefully you'll find today's presentation just as interesting as the previous ones. So as Fiona mentioned, today we're going to be looking at why January is a great time to run a digital bequest campaign or an online will campaign, and how it can really help not-for-profits start the year off strong. So the agenda for today. So first up, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to Adam and I from Gathered Here. And then we're going to go straight into look at exactly why January is the perfect time to run an online will campaign. Then we're going to go over some real life examples and case studies from partners that have run campaigns over the New Year period in the past, what they did, what was involved, and the results from those campaigns. And then Adam is going to take you through the online will platform and the gift and will management platform. I know a lot of you here today are already partners of ours, so you're very familiar with the GMP. So it'll just be an abridged version of the GMP, and it'll focus specifically on how the platform can kind of help run seasonal campaigns for our partners. If you're not currently using the GMP or you're not currently partnering with Gathered Here, and you would like to have a demonstration of the platform, you can just see the QR code on the screen now. Feel free to scan that and you can book a time in with Adam and his team when it suits you. At the end, we'll be answering as many questions as we can, just depends on how much time is left. But as Fiona mentioned, Nicola, our colleague, will be answering questions in the chat box. So feel free to drop any questions in there as we go. All right. So just very quickly, an introduction to Adam and I. So I'm Lucy. I'm the head of the partner success at Gathered Here. I've had approximately 20 years experience in not-for-profit. Prior to this is my first corporate role, but I worked at Plan International, Leukemia Foundation, and the last 13 years of my career at Kids Undercover. Hello to anyone from Kids Undercover that's here today. And my colleague Adam has also worked within the not-for-profit space, around 10 years working at Guide Dogs Victoria, Helping Hand Group and Dialogue in the Dark. So the reason that we really want you to know that we have had this first-hand not-for-profit experience is that it really does inform everything that we do at Gathered Here. So we've been in your shoes. We understand the joys and the challenges that come with working in not-for-profit, and we're really here to help you. So speaking of Gathered Here, so we started back in 2017 as a funeral comparison service with the aim of helping families make better and more informed decisions during incredibly difficult times of their lives. in choosing funeral directors. As we grew, we started looking at ways that we could make the other end of life services more accessible and affordable for everyone. And that's why we launched the free online will platform. So because we really wanted everyone to be able to access a will and write a will, regardless of their income or their estate size or their ability to visit a solicitor's office and pay for a solicitor. Fast forward a few years, and we're now one of Australia's most trusted online will providers, with over 2,000 five-star reviews from verified customers that we're incredibly proud of. And over 35,000 wills have been written using our platform. So that's around 1 in 5 of those include a gift. And those gifts are worth an estimated $480 million, with every cent earmarked for hundreds of charities and organisations around Australia. So Gathered Here also provides gifts in wills professionals like yourselves with meaningful insights into donor information, gifts, gift revenue, and campaign success that really give you the tools that you need to make more strategic and database decisions around gifts and wills. So currently we're trusted by over 350 organisations in Australia, and they have every shape and size sector you can imagine. So we work with charities, foundations, theatres, schools, museums, universities, membership organisations, and more recently we've partnered with a couple of AFL clubs, which is fantastic. So any kind of organisation that can receive income from gift and will and what we can work with. So the last 2 years have seen such a huge shift in the online will space. So when I started at Gathered Here just over 2 years ago, we only had a very small handful of partners on board at that stage, and they were our early adopters. So Christine from WWF and Aileen from Australia for UNHCR were sort of really key partners very much at the start and are still with us today. So from the very early days, they could see the potential of online wills and really embraced the technology and have since had some great success with Gathered Here. So since then, 2 years on, we're now, 350 plus partners and counting, bringing on more and more every week. So I think it's sort of fair to say that the online will train, it hasn't just arrived, it's taken off. And as we saw in the US and the UK sort of 3 or 4 years prior, the same thing happened. So I urge you, if you're still unsure about whether or not to take the step into this space, I really urge you to consider it. This is your sign to get going with it. All right. So why is January the right time to run an online will campaign? So there's a few reasons. So firstly, for many organisations, there is a low likelihood of any other competing campaign happening around that time. And so, as you would all be aware, that generally for charities and not-for-profits, 4 of the biggest fundraising drives we see across the sector are the tax appeal, which takes place in May, June, include a charity week in September, and the end of year appeal in November, December. So obviously this may be generalising a little, but I know a number of causes also have awareness months in January, but looking at the industry as a whole, this is a pattern that we see, that there is no major sector-wide campaign in Q1 like we see in the other quarters of the year. So this is important for a few reasons. So firstly, if your organisation is one of the many that doesn't run a major campaign in January, there's no risk of a gift and will activity or campaign clashing with any other fundraising initiatives. So with that said, there's absolutely nothing stopping organisations from running some kind of online will activity alongside other fundraising initiatives. And lots of charities do that very successfully. When it comes to doing a larger campaign just around online wills, when you're wanting to communicate preferably with quite a broad audience of your supporters, it's ideal that that campaign has its own dedicated time and space in the comms calendar. So by choosing a low activity period like January, it should also make it hopefully easier for you to get buy-in from your broader team about choosing a month when there's not a lot of other things happening. So finally, and very importantly, because January is generally that low activity month, it also means that a greater number of charities and non-profits take part during that time. And this leads to a greater awareness about will writing generally and also about gift pledging. So when we look at wills written via Gathered Here, 19% include a charitable gift. So that's overall. So that is compared to the national average for traditional wills, which is around 6%, it's a pretty impressive result. So, but when you look at wills that are written via our platform by a charity's supporters or a partner's supporters, when they run a campaign, that figure skyrockets to 60%. So most people who pledge a gift in their will, they actually tend to pledge more than one gift. So the average number of gifts that will writers will leave to will writers who have come through a partner campaign, is around 2.4 gifts on average that they'll leave. So when more charities get involved in running campaigns in January, we will see a far higher rate of gifts being pledged because we are able to reach these people who are already interested in charitable giving. And because these generous supporters are pledging multiple gifts, the impact of a campaign really does extend far beyond just that single organisation. So let's look at an example. So say one charity sends a series of emails to its supporters and receives 20 gifts. So it's such a great result for that organisation. But what's also amazing is that an additional 28 gifts would be pledged to other worthy causes. So if you imagine scaling that up again to 100 organisations taking part, the entire NFP space benefits from that. So not only by running a campaign would you help deliver gifts to other organisations, but you also have a greater chance of benefiting from the campaigns of other charities and connecting with brand new supporters. We see some of our larger partners sending out campaigns or emails to tens of thousands of supporters, up to 140,000 most recently. So smaller organisations with smaller supporter bases are also able to benefit from that exposure. But of course, you have to be involved to benefit. And with so many organisations getting involved in January, now is the time to start planning what you want to do with our support. So you'll be able to really get ready to go when January rolls around. So moving on to the next reason why January is such a great time for an online will campaign. So lots of NFPs and companies alike are operating at a reduced capacity in January. I'm sure many of you can attest to this, that the office is just quieter at the start of the year. And from about mid-January, people start dribbling back in again. It's rarely a full team on deck until late January. So it won't surprise you that isn't just anecdotal, that is backed by data. So in January 2023, 43% of employees worked reduced or no hours at all due to annual leave. If you add in the other types of leave to that, like sick leave and carers leave, that figure climbs to 56%. So this pattern has actually been trending upwards over the last 5 years. So more than twice as many people chose to work reduced hours in January this year compared to 2019. So for NFPs, that represents a huge decrease in labour. You're talking about trying to get things over the line that when half of your workforce isn't there to implement and assist. So obviously that can pose significant challenges, but did you also know not only are less people around, but those that are around are less productive. So 26% of people said January was their least productive month of the year, whilst just 7% said it was their most productive. So you may be thinking, why on earth would I want to run a campaign in January? No one's around to help. Well, it might sound counterintuitive, but online wills are actually the ideal fundraising tool when resources are stretched. That's because they can generate impressive revenue for very low cost and a modest time investment. So low touch initiatives such as a series of emails to existing supporters have been found to be really effective at generating gifts in wills, and plus they're completely free to run. And the best bit is that campaigns can be planned well in advance. So when you've got your whole team available, between now and the end of the year, so that by the time January comes around, you can get it all signed off beforehand. And then when January comes around, you just have to hit send on the emails and wait for the gifts to come in. So we've even created a bunch of resources that we supply to all of our partners, and are constantly refreshing and updating so that we've got the best possible recommendations. So we have everything from newsletter tips to email content recommendations, templates that you can tweak to suit your own organisation. So these are completely free and available for everyone, even if you're not a Gathered Here partner. And you can see there's a QR code on the screen now. You can just scan that and it'll take you straight through to the resources section of our website. And so our aim, especially in partner success, is that we really want to make it easy for partners to run campaigns, not in reinventing the wheel, just using tried and tested techniques and strategies to get some confirmed gifts and wills. And as I said before, the more organisations who take part in these campaigns, the bigger the impact and the more that everyone benefits. So just a reminder as well I'm sure there's lots of our existing partners watching today, that if you are thinking of running a campaign in January, just let us know and we'll be there to support you and make sure that you've got all the resources that you need and that you're set up and you have everything ready to go. So far we've focused on why January is a great time for NFPs to run a campaign, but as we move through these next 2 points, we're going to be looking at why it's also a great time for your supporters to be offered a free online will. So firstly, January is the month for thinking about life admin and personal finances. So I think a lot of us are guilty, I know I am, of blowing the budget over Christmas and New Year. So in January, we try to get things back on track again and set up some good habits for the year to come. So again, this isn't just anecdotal. There's lots of evidence to support this theory. I'm not sure if you know this, but I certainly didn't. But January is actually internationally recognised as the Financial Wellness Month. So we see lots of finance-related content and initiatives in line with that in the broader media. So there are over 1 billion results for the search term no spend January over that time of the year. And being money smart just becomes like a major topic of conversation. And so data from the CommBank shows 93% of Australians set a financial goal in the run up to New Year, while Finder data showed 83% actually set a financial goal in January of this year. So this is also reflected in the media. So here we have a bunch of articles from January this year from some of the major publishers in Australia. You might be able to read those, but there is a lot of talk about money saving, budgeting, and getting on top of your financial situation. There's even an article from SBS about writing a will being the most important thing you can do as a New Year's resolution. So it really couldn't be better timing to offer your supporters a free online will. And that's because Australians are in the right frame of mind to think about these things. and many are actively looking for easy ways to whip their finances into shape. Offering an online will, particularly a free one, is timely and it will be genuinely helpful to your supporters. And you can also benefit from the messaging in the wider media. So there will be external reminders and triggers encouraging people to organise their life admin, look at financial decisions, and even write a will. So again, this all just reinforces the idea that writing a will is an important life admin task. So when they are contacted by you, so when your supporters are contacted by you with a free online will offer, they already have that thought firmly implanted in their mind. So this final point is really interesting. Even though everyone's focused on saving money and tightening budgets at the moment, data shows that doesn't actually impact the likelihood of gifts being pledged or the value of those gifts. So we actually figured this out when we were researching for an earlier topic for one of our webinars, excuse me, which is about using online wills during economic uncertainty. So again, there's a QR code there if you want to scan it and have a read of that. It's a really, really interesting report. For that piece of research, we tracked the value of gifts pledged and compared that against the cash rate over a 12-month period. So that scary looking orange line shows the cash rate and the blue dotted line shows the average value per gift in Will Donor on Gathered Here. So as you can see, there's absolutely no correlation. The cash rate is climbing dramatically while the average value per donor stays fairly consistent. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Supporters don't feel any financial impact when they pledge a gift in their will. So that giving behaviour is far less likely to be impacted when budgets are tightened. But pledging a gift or halving the amount you pledge to your favourite cause in your will isn't going to pay the bills at the end of the month. So by pledging a gift or keeping one in there, will hopefully give supporters a feel-good boost, during a time that is challenging economically. And also that sense of control that they can actually have a really positive impact on the world, even if they can't do it right at that moment. So this is further supported by these two graphs. So one on the left shows the percentage of wills with a gift. And as you can see, there is a spike in September during Include a Charity Week and another spike in January. So both are periods when lots of our partners are offering online wills to their supporters via dedicated campaigns. And then on the right, the overall value of the gifts matches up. So a spike in September and a spike in January. Again, it's just a reminder that even though January is often about tightening the budget after New Year, we do see a significant uptake in the number of wills with a gift, and the value stays strong as well. So finally, our last point, which is also focused on your supporters. So January is a great time to reach out with an online will offer because people are already reflecting about the previous year, including any life events or major changes that might have happened over the previous 12 months. So I think it's natural to look back on the previous year and consider any big changes or achievements. So this might include, buying or selling a house, getting married, engaged, having a child, a new pet, or starting or ending a relationship. So I know I've had many New Years reminiscing about the previous year, and I'm sure many of you have too. So it's important, though, for these life changes that they should really be reflected in an update of a will, or writing a will. And so again, being able to provide a really useful tool to your supporters over this period will be a great thing, where you're giving them this tool just when they need it. And then again, data backs up that many of your supporters do in fact need a will. Okay, so please don't look at this slide and think we're suggesting that you should reach out to your supporters asking if they're considering a divorce. Absolutely not. But we did come across this data and found it quite interesting, so we wanted to share it. So something else I didn't know until recently is that January is actually referred to as divorce month in legal circles. due to the spike of inquiries around that time. So Australian Google Trends data shows that the search term divorce lawyer actually peaks in the second week of January. And you can see there two quotes from divorce lawyers, both noting that there is a spike in divorce inquiries at the start of the year. We also spoke to our in-house solicitor, Rika, about this, and she said that, yes, absolutely, there tends to be a spike in wills being made in January, often as people seek to update their will, their wishes when their relationships change or end. And again, not trying to say that you should be targeting these people going through challenging times in their relationships, but it's just really an example of how that increased interest in will writing happens in January. And so, if some of your supporters do happen to be going through a separation or something like that, this is actually a really genuinely helpful tool that you can provide to them at the right time. So I know that's not the most uplifting point to end on. So I think I'll just do a little summary of what we've discussed so far. So to summarize, why is January the right time to run an online will? So first, there's a low likelihood of other competing campaigns in January, which means the online will offer can have its own dedicated space in the comms calendar. And you should hopefully also be able to get buy-in more easily from your broader team. And also there's wider industry participation, which leads to more gifts all around. So secondly, it's also perfect timing because many NFPs are operating at a reduced capacity, but online wills can generate impressive revenue with modest time and cost investment. So low touch initiatives like EDMs are not only free, but they can also be highly effective and planned well in advance. So when January rolls around, there is nothing to do except hit send and watch the gifts roll in. Next, Australians are already thinking about their finances. They're in that right frame of mind to write a will. So offering a free online will is timely and actually very helpful for them. And the messaging is also supported by the wider media. And importantly, tighter budgets also won't impact their giving behaviour for gifts and wills. Finally, people are reflecting on their previous year and major changes, typically trigger a will writing or updating their will. And there are spikes in people needing a will at this time of year. So now, hopefully I've convinced you that January is a really great time to run an online will campaign. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. So MS Plus had an interesting campaign the previous January 2023, where they sent emails to a range of different audiences. We're not going to go into all of them, but I did want to pull out this one segment because it's a great example of how you don't necessarily need a huge supporter base or budget to get great results. So MS Plus, and hi Beck if you're out there, sent one EDM using some of the content recommendations that we'd suggested. And that EDM was sent to 462 active subscribers in the client and carer category. So as a result of that one email, 56 accounts were created with Gathered Here, which meant that they, in the future, these people can go back and log in and update their will for free as many times as they like. So of that 56 accounts, that was 12% of people who were interested in the offer of a free online will, which is obviously great engagement. From there, we saw 31 wills completed and 10 gifts pledged with an estimated future value of 54,000. That was all just from one email to 462 people. I mean, the beautiful thing about the GMP, which Adam's going to show you through shortly, is that that's where, we can look at the demographics of the donors, the gift information, lots of good stuff. So from this particular campaign, we can see that of those confirmed gifts, one person was over 85, 4 people were between 55 and 64, and then a further 4 were aged between 45 and 54, and then we had one person in the 25 to 34 age bracket. So again, it's just such a really positive result overall, but especially to see that half of the gifts came from supporters over the age of 55. Next, let's have a look at UNICEF. Again, UNICEF did a lot of activity around New Year. And one thing that they always do really well is segment their audiences. So they can track how each audience is performing and responding to the online will offer. So here we can see UNICEF sent a 2-part EDM series to just under 10,000 regular donors. So these are people who donate to UNICEF on a monthly basis. The first EDM was sent to 9861 recipients, and then a follow-up was sent to 9763 recipients. So the interesting thing here is that it really demonstrates the importance of a multi-part email campaign. So we can see that the first email didn't result in any gifts, but the follow-up email saw 4 gifts come through, which was worth an estimated 43,000. So 3 of these gifts were specific monetary gifts, which is less. Usually we see more residual gifts, but in this particular case, it was 3 monetary gifts, all $10,000 each, bit of a coincidence. And then one of those gifts was a residual gift of 2%, which is conservatively estimated at $13,000. And then on the other end of the donor spectrum, UNICEF also wanted to separate out their lapsed donors. And it's interesting, and I'm sure you've heard us talk about this before, that lapsed donors, whilst they can often be overlooked in fundraising initiatives, but time and time again, we're seeing that this great success in reactivating lapsed donors via the use of online wills. So here you can see UNICEF sent an EDM to 34,000 lapsed donors, and 3 gifts were pledged worth an estimated 140,000. So the most valuable of those is estimated to be worth over 132,000, and that was pledged by someone aged between 65 to 74. UNICEF then followed up that email with a second one just over a week later, and managed to lock in another gift, this time worth 33,000. So I just want to thank UNICEF and MS Plus for allowing us to share their campaign information. So I've touched on a few benefits of the GMP already, but it's probably time for the GMP expert, Adam, to take you through that in a bit more detail. Thanks, Adam. Over to you.
Thanks, Lucy. I'll wear my expert badge proudly. So for context, our online wills platform was built in consultation with both estate planning lawyers and a charity advisory panel. So it's absolutely fit for purpose, both in terms of will writers and for NFPs. We have over 2,000 5-star reviews from will writers, and over 350 NFPs currently trust us as their online wills platform. We're constantly improving the technology to make the experience as sleek and as streamlined as possible. So we'll take a quick look through things now. When a will writer arrives on an NFP landing page, this is the first thing they'll see. So we have a few examples here from our partners at UNICEF, WWF, Greenpeace, and the Heart Foundation. As you can see, this is co-branded with your colors, messaging, logos, and images. This can all be updated as many times as you'd like. So if you wanted to, you could create a custom landing page specifically hitting on some of those key New Year themes that Lucy mentioned earlier. You can talk about the importance of your cause while tying it into the new year, reflecting on the past 12 months, getting things sorted out for the year ahead, or starting 2024 off right by supporting a cause you care about. All you have to do is jump into the GMP. You can update the text, the images, and anything. You have full control over all of that. The landing page here is currently optional. You can choose to direct your supporters straight into the Wills platform if you prefer, but we found that partners who implement a custom landing page such as this see a 30% increase in conversions on average. Speaking of the Wills platform, this is what that looks like for those of you who haven't seen it. So if you choose not to use the custom landing page, this is where your supporters will arrive. If you do choose to use those landing pages that we were just looking at, this is the page where they'll end up once they click through any of the links on that page. Again, you'll see this is co-branded, so your supporters have that consistency throughout. You have customization options here as well in the bottom left of the page. You can update the image and the messaging there as often as you'd like. You can see here that the will platform itself covers general information about the will writer, lets them appoint executors, divide their estate how they want, pledge gifts to loved ones or causes that they care about, and they can add in specific funeral wishes as well. There are a few elements that you can't see here, including appointing guardians for children or pets, naming backup executors and beneficiaries. All in all, it is a really helpful tool. I won't go through the entire thing today, though, but there's a few key points I do want to touch on. So firstly, diving into that supporter information a bit more, this section collects a wide range of information, including name, age, address, contact information, relationship status, and parental status. If the supporter opts to share that information with you, it's all stored in the GMP, and you can export all of that data to add to your database as well. It almost goes without saying, but this is obviously a fantastic resource for stewarding gifts and wills donors, strengthening your relationships, and keeping supporters close to your organization. Currently, around 50% of supporters are opting to share their information, although in some cause areas, we do see opt-in rates of up to 70%. Next up, just a super quick look at the executors section. Will writers here can appoint multiple executors. They can also appoint backup executors in case their primary executor passes away or they just can't do the job when the time comes for whatever reason. All in all, will writers have the capacity to nominate up to 3 executors and 3 backup executors. The great thing about allowing for so many executors here is that they will all be notified when the will is completed, which means greater awareness of the will's existence, and just one more thing that helps towards ensuring the will writer's wishes are realized when the time comes. Next up, we'll have a quick look at the estate section. So this is where the will writers can choose to divvy up their estate. The first step here allows will writers to name individual people, and next we'll move into choosing charities and NFPs. The banner across the first box there is calling out the specific charity. This will only appear to the will writer when they arrive on the platform through one of our partners' specific links. So this is off the back of your email that you might be sending out to your supporters, as Lacey mentioned before. If you send a link to all of your supporters, they'll see your chosen color, logo, and messaging at the top. Again, they'll see your name and logo in this box in the middle, and this makes it extremely easy for them to pledge a gift. This feature is 100% free. You could launch with your very own version of this in a matter of hours for absolutely no cost. It's a fantastic way to connect with your existing supporter base, and we have lots of partners that focus specifically on their own database and cultivating gifts and wills from within that network. But the platform is also incredibly useful if you want to expand your network and reach new supporters while generating gifts and wills from people completely unknown to your organization. 88% of will writers come directly to Gathered Here from the Gathered Here homepage rather than arriving from the Wills platform through a charity link or campaign. We're able to generate that interest a couple of ways. Firstly, we maintain consistent paid acquisition activity, so we can guarantee a steady stream of will writers visiting our platform. Secondly, we also offer a range of other end-of-life services, including funeral comparisons, probate, and information on celebrants, as well as headstones. We've become the go-to place for people looking to arrange end-of-life admin, so we're able to achieve organic traffic that way too. All of this translates through to more gifts. Around 70% of the gifts being pledged via Gathered Here come from this group of people who have just arrived on Gathered Here without any sort of prompt from a charity or nonprofit. But why does this matter to you? Well, it means that our partners can access a huge audience which is completely new to them. Access to this audience is available to partners on our premium tier, and those that choose to take advantage of this audience certainly benefit from doing so. On average, partners that tapped into this audience saw gifts pledged increase by 187% per week. So yes, you can absolutely use the Gathered Here platform for free, and you can use that to connect with your existing supporter base. But when charities and NFPs tap into this new Gathered Here audience, they see a significant increase in gifts. So how does it work? There's a few areas in the online will platform that put NFPs front and center. For will writers, it's quite difficult to just think of a charity you'd like to support off the top of your head. When you see them there and you can read a little bit more information about the cause, it really helps the will writer to move from a sense of uncertainty into thinking, this is an awesome idea and I'd love to get involved. So let's take a look at the featured list. Every will writer sees this list as they write their will. That's well over 1,000 will writers every month seeing this information. As you can imagine, it's highly effective at securing gifts. You can see this section Sorry, you can see in this section, you can also toggle between different cause areas. So looking at the middle image here, you can see that this user has switched to looking at animals and wildlife charities, and they can choose from a whole bunch of different causes in that area. Across the top, you can see all of the different cause areas that they can toggle between as well. Finally, we have the group listings, which lets users support a group of charities within the same category. And organizations within those categories constantly rotate. We see a lot of engagement from will writers in this area, and we believe this is because adding a charity to your will is a pretty big deal if you're not familiar with them. The big decision to pick one organization over another, and when you might not know who they are or exactly what they do, this can be quite confronting. A lot of users do have a particular passion for a certain cause area though, and that's where these groups help to bridge that gap. Will writers will get a sense of security knowing they're supporting a cause that they care about, and they don't necessarily feel the need to go off and become deeply familiar with the organizations before writing them into their will. Category is particularly good for some of the smaller organizations that can't necessarily rely on the same brand recognition to earn gifts the same way that larger organizations can. Instead of fighting to stand out amongst the bigger names, they're chosen based on the cause area. Thinking specifically in terms of a New Year campaign, it's a fantastic time to tap into the Gathered Here audience because we see an increase in wills being written, which means greater visibility for your organization. You get to put your organization in front of more will writers and increase your chances of receiving a gift from someone who is completely unknown to your organization. And the gifts that we see coming through are generally quite high value as well. The average value of the residual gifts coming through the platform is worth an estimated $83,000, and 80% of the gifts being pledged are residual. Looking at specific monetary gifts, they account for about 18% of all gifts being pledged and are worth an average of $6,500. Now, I know what you're thinking, 80% plus 18% does not add up to 100. The remaining 2% is made up from specific items that people are choosing to leave in their wills. So this is things like vehicles, jewelry, artwork, and general property. So back to the wills platform. While the will maker is dividing their estate, they'll be asked to distribute via percentages. This is what's driving that higher amount of residual gifts compared to the specific monetary gifts. It's just been prioritized in the design process. Of course, if a will writer would rather be specific, they can absolutely do that in the next step. This section here allows for gifting of specific amounts or specific items. Again, a very small number of gifts are specific items, but we've seen some really valuable ones come through, including things like silver bullion, vintage cars, and jewelry. Will writers can also nominate backup beneficiaries. This is a really fantastic feature because we see quite a few older will writers who would be more than happy to pledge their full estate to a charity or cause. They want to make sure that their partner is financially stable until they pass away. Sometimes we'll see our older will writers pledging 100% of their estate to their partner, but then naming a charity or NFP as a backup in case their partner dies first. We even see some couples doing this for each other, so the money is destined for the organization they care about as soon as both parties pass away. We do track backup gifts separately within the GMP, so you'll have an accurate report on which gifts are specific left to the organization and which are backup gifts, but we'll get to that in a moment as well. Working through the wills process, users also have the opportunity to add in some information about their funeral wishes. Again, just giving that little bit more value to the will writer and your supporter. So this is a really helpful financial tool and end-of-life planning service. They'll then come to the section where they're asked if they'd like to share their information. As I mentioned before, we currently see around 50% of will writers sharing their details with charities and NFPs that they've chosen to support. That information is then all stored within the GMP, where it can be exported and added to your own software. So we'll take a quick look at that now. The Gifts and Wills Management Platform, or GMP, as you've heard us call it a few times, puts valuable data in the hands of gifts and wills professionals. It simplifies bequest management and campaigns tracking and gives you the tools you need to make strategic and specific decisions for your organization. Again, the GMP was designed in consultation with an advisory NFP panel to make sure it's fit for purpose and is doing exactly what you need it to. The first screen of the GMP is our overview screen. This is where you'll find some high-level reporting and analytics, including a summary of the estimated gift value, unique visitors to your custom landing page, and the number of confirmed gifts left in wills. You can also see a breakdown by gift type, and along the right-hand side, we introduce the concept of channels. On the overview page, this is just a super simplified version with a running total of how many gifts you've received through different channels, but it's far more detailed as we move into the campaigns section of the GMP. So let's have a quick look at that. As you can see here, this fictional charity has created several different campaigns around New Year. They've split out their ADMs into various target audiences, including active donors, lapsed donors, staff and volunteers, and over 65s. At the end there, you can see that they've also included a prompt in their regular newsletter. The beautiful thing about this is that all of these campaigns have their own unique links. So you can now see exactly how many visitors there are and how many accounts were created, how many wills were written, how many gifts were pledged, and the estimated value of those gifts. You can tailor your messaging specifically to each of these target demographics, and you can see how successful each campaign was. If you don't want to go quite so granular, you could just create one campaign link for New Year's comms, and you could then compare the impact from that to other comms that you may choose to run throughout the year. This way you have hard evidence to show how well running a New Year campaign has worked for your organization in comparison to other campaigns. You can also generate really in-depth reports with all of this information, which makes it really easily shareable with the wider team and the rest of your organization. Quick look at that now in the analytics section. The analytics function of the GMP really allows our partners to perform detailed tracking and reporting. All of this data can be filtered by campaign, channel, whether it's a primary or backup gift, and by time frame as well. Scrolling a bit further down on the analytics page, we get into some more detailed breakdowns of gift types, values, as well as the different channels that those gifts are being pledged through. This is particularly useful if, for example, you would like to run one campaign across multiple channels. You can see a nice side-by-side comparison of how the same or similar messaging is achieving different results throughout those different channels. So going back to the New Year campaign example, you may choose to do a multi-wave ADM, inclusion in a new newsletter, social media post. Sky's the limit here, and all of the reporting here will help you to break all of that information down. Finally, we get a little bit more granular at the bottom of the analytics page here, and we start getting into some of the donor demographics. Here you'll be able to see some information about who's engaged with the selected campaign or channel. You can see which campaigns are having the biggest impact, who is the most engaged, and even a little bit about their lifestyle, whether they have kids or partners. We delve a bit deeper into that in the next slide here. So this is where all of the individual donor and gift information is stored. Here you'll be able to see the date of birth, name, address, email, phone number, relationship and parental status, gift value, and which channel generated that gift. Again, it's around 50% of people who are opting to share their full details with charities and NFPs, which gives you the opportunity to then start to maintain contact with these supporters. You can see that there are a few examples of supporters here who have opted out. With those individuals, you'll still be able to see the gift value, their age bracket, as well as the campaign and channel where that gift was left. This data can all be filtered to show only opt-in supporters, which makes it incredibly useful as you're able to export this into a CSV file to update your own records. And finally, we have a look at the advertising area of the GMP, which is where you're able to tap into that gathered here audience I spoke about before. You can see how well advertising is working for your organization, compare the types and values of gifts being pledged through those different channels, and really dig into the performance here. So that's all from us. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit inspired and have an idea of how an online Wills campaign can help your organization to start 2024 off with a bang. If you're already a partner with us and you're keen to get things running for a New Year campaign, please do get in touch and we'll do everything we can to help. If you're not part of the community yet, but you're interested in seeing the full platform, you can just scan the QR code here and it'll take you through to a calendar where you can schedule a time to chat with our team. I think we do have a bit of time now for some questions, so I'll hand back over to Fiona.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Lucy. We do have a question here, which I know Lucy is in the middle of typing an answer to, but I might put it to you, Adam. It's Renee who's asked, does the charity upload their database to GMP for a campaign, and how is that data treated? Is it private and so on?
Great question. So no is the short answer there. There's no data that you're importing into the GMP. The only time we ever get any access to any sort of data from your supporters is when they create an account with us and kind of sign up to write their will on our platform. So all you're really doing from a data perspective as a user in the GMP is creating those links that we looked at, setting up those different pages that we reviewed together, but you're not importing any data other than just your logo and that sort of thing, but certainly no donor data going in.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I will just say to the audience, we do have about 5 minutes for questions. If you'd like to pop them into the box, please do. I wrote down a couple of questions as we were going along, and my apologies if you did cover these off, but these are obviously I can completely understand why January is such a great time for these campaigns. Obviously, we're talking about a period that follows Christmas campaigns, which for a lot of people will be one of their biggest campaigns of the year. In respect to UNICEF and MS Society and other organizations you've worked with, how involved were you in talking about the data selection? Because I'm going to assume, obviously most charities are going to have gone really hard with the majority of their supporters in the lead up to Christmas. How do you know what the process is of selecting data for this campaign in January?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so you mean selecting the audience, which audiences to go at?
Given that selecting the audience, given specifically because it's coming on the back of the Christmas appeals.
Yeah, it's a great question. So every partner does it sort of differently. Some partners are happy to do sort of a one size fits all approach to their broader audience. And it hasn't seemed to have been an issue that it's off the back of the end of year appeal. I guess because it's a different ask. It's actually it's an offer of a free online will. So it's actually a great thing to be able to offer people. It's a benefit to them, and it will be seen as valuable to them. So yeah, it's not, even though they've received a cash ask or an online a donation ask for Christmas appeal, it doesn't really impact at all on the January online will campaign.
That's great to hear, and you're right, it's a very different offering, and it's an offering versus an ask, really. So no, that's a great point.
I guess one thing I didn't answer was about the data side, really. So yeah, some charities decide to do a one size fits all approach. Others will want to do like what UNICEF and MS did, which was more segmented. And I guess if that was going to be the case, even more reason to spend the time, looking at the data this year, towards the end of this year, so that all the data set is ready to go for that January campaign. And then, that's what we can assist with that as well.
Great. A couple of questions have come through. So one from Nadia, who's asked, do you have a resource anywhere that shows some examples of effective landing pages? Is that something that...
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So part of the kickoff sessions that we have include looking at relevant, other landing pages of organisations that are in a similar space and or size. And then we all, we offer feedback as well. Once the landing pages have been populated by our partners, we can give feedback about, if there's any tweaks that are needed.
Great. I can see that Nicola's in the process of answering Fern's question, so I might just quickly move on to Prees, who asks, we currently use Campaign Monitor to send our newsletter and other EDMs. Does Gathered Here integrate with external platforms, or are EDMs sent from the GMP?
Yeah, really good question. Thanks, Pri. So you're not sending anything directly from the GMP. What you're doing in the GMP is just creating those links. So you can then take those links and plug them into Campaign Monitor, any other platforms that you might be using. So, we work with partners who use all sorts of different things, different platforms, different CRMs, different comms tools. So yeah, really all you're generating from within the GMP is that unique link, and that plays nicely with just about everything else. The only thing I will say with that, and kind of directing back to Lucy, when you are using those other platforms as well, it's always really helpful to make sure that anything you're sending out to your supporters, just flick that across to your partner success manager at Gathered Here first, just to make sure that all of the different tracking links from different platforms are playing nicely with each other, we can make sure that everything's pulling through as it should before you hit send on something out to your entire supporter base.
Good advice. Good advice. You've seen what works, I'm sure. A question from Lillian, who's curious to know if you have any arts companies within your partner mix at the moment.
We do have a few. Yeah, there's a few sort of theaters that we work with. Not quite exactly the same, but sort of in that arts and leisure section. There's a few museums that we work with as well. So yes, certainly have seen some campaigns and results coming through there. So everyone's welcome. We'd love to have a chat.
Let's have a look. So a question from Holly. Regular giving and lapsed donors were mentioned as segments to send an EDM to, but are there any recommendations about what segments are the most effective to target with this type of campaign? Yeah.
So we actually recommend going out to everybody. And because it's anyone over the age of 18, everyone over the age of 18 should have a will, and the more we can start to normalize it, and the younger people are, the better. So I guess everyone ideally, but then yes, there's segments within that. So regular givers, lapsed donors, event participants, e-newsletter subscribers. So yes, like I said before, some charities choose to be really targeted with their messaging for each segment, are quite sophisticated with that, but then other organisations are just do a one-size-fits-all series of emails to all of their supporters, which works perfectly well as well.
Okay, great. I had a question. You spoke a bit in the presentation about kind of average gift sizes and so on, and with the UNICEF case study, you gave specific amounts for the size of the gifts that came through as a result of their campaign. How did you come up with those figures?
So for specific gifts, obviously that's easy to work out. If somebody leaves $10,000, that's $10,000. For the residual gifts, we just use data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics around median estate size. I think Lucy mentioned it. We try to be more conservative with those estimates, but it is always an estimate, and we try to ensure that it's always spoken about as such. There's no part of the wills creation process where we're asking people to enter in their net value or anything like that and spitting out a number at the end. So it is based on that median estate size from the ABS.
Okay, it's great to know where that comes from. There was a question from Vina, again, about data. Fundraisers just love to ask questions about data, don't we? And she asked, who owns the data, charities or Gathered Here? And what she's talking about is the people who sign up and write their wills on the platform. Who owns that data?
So when they sign up, the first part of that process is basically agreeing to become a Gathered Here customer and agreeing to our terms and conditions and privacy policies and all of those sorts of things. So at that stage, they do become a Gathered Here customer. That is Gathered Here data and information. We obviously share that information if they do opt in to allow us to do so back with the charity. But yeah, I guess in terms of data ownership, that would be with Gathered Here at the point in which they create an account with us.
Okay, fantastic. Now, Nicola's just in the process of answering one last question, but we have got to 1 o'clock. To final. Okay. What we're going to do, I believe, is that we're going to, just because there has been quite a few questions, we're going to just put some answers together to those and send them out post-webinar with the recording. Am I correct in saying that? I hope I'm not.
We can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we might wrap up here because I can see that people are dropping off and obviously going to other meetings and so on. But thank you everyone who came along and watched today's webinar. We know that obviously online wills are really taking off, and we can see the ever-growing interest in this space. So it's great for you to come along and have a listen today. Thank you so much, Adam and Lucy, for sharing your information today. Always fascinating. And Nicola, thank you for typing as quickly as you could those answers to the questions. We will send out those out in the post webinar email. But everyone, please have a great afternoon. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Gathered Here, and we hope to see you all again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, everyone.